Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Ron, and today we are going to be taking a look at the worst overclocks for Gunner. Again, finger quotations for worst because most of these aren't really that bad. They're actually quite good. A good example is going to be the Autocannon. We'll talk about that when we get there. This also is just made for fun. So first up, we have the Leadstorm Minigun. And for the minigun, the overclock that I would pick here, this one is kind of going to be a boring one, but I would pick thin drum walls. This one's not even a bad overclock. It's still pretty good. You get 300 maximum ammo and you get slightly faster cooling rates. Both those things are really nice to throw on the minigun, and it will feel nice if you don't have any overclocks in the minigun. So if this is your first one, don't feel bad at all. It's still a really solid overclock. It was between this one or it was Bullet Hell for minigun, and Bullet Hell has so much variety in it. And it's also just a super fun overclock that I wasn't going to be able to pick that one as the worst, even though statistically it probably is worse than this one. And just in consistency, it's probably worse than this one too, because its consistency can be all over the place. Sometimes it's amazing, lets you do some crazy stuff like shoot around corners and kill stuff. Other times it just doesn't trigger that often and you end up running through bullets a little bit too quick. Up next we have the Thunderhead Heavy Autocannon, and the worst overclock, big quotations on worst overclock for the Autocannon, is going to be composite drums for me. This one is nothing but an upside, and a pretty good upside. You get 110 more ammo than you already have. The Autocannon is super ammo efficient. If you take this, you're going to be even more ammo efficient. You can actually get up to 770 rounds. That's great. Your other upside to this one is that you get a 0.5 second faster reload time, which is kind of nice because the Autocannon does have a long reload. However, most of the time people are running Born Ready on the Autocannon, and you rarely actually reload the Autocannon. You fire it most of the way out or completely out and then switch to your secondary and just wait for Born Ready to trigger. This one is why I said there's big quotation marks on worst for the Autocannon. The Autocannon does not have any bad overclocks. All of them are really, really good. This one was just the one that I would say is the least really good, but it's still really good. If you're getting any overclocks for the Autocannon and you really like the gun, try them all. They're all really solid. Up next we have the Hurricane, and for Hurricane, the worst overclock, this one's not too surprising, I don't think, for most people. This is going to be manual guidance cutoff. This one's just not a great overclock in general. For it being a clean overclock, it has a pretty major downside in my opinion. Its upside is that you get 33% faster moving missiles, but once you stop firing the Hurricane, then your missiles are no longer guided. You can no longer steer them into enemies, so they just go straight. That is just a big turnoff to me. I do not like that at all. If I wanted something like this, but a lot better, I would pick the Overtune feed mechanism, which has almost the same speed investment, but it also gives you a rate of fire investment, and it doesn't mess with your ability to steer the rockets. Another problem with this is that if you don't want to steer the rockets, you don't even need an overclock for this. You can just simply swing your pickaxe or switch to your secondary, and that would solve it, I guess, if that's really a problem for you. But it feels like it's solving a problem that's not really a problem to most people. I could also potentially see people picking Mine Layer System here too as their least favorite, because it also comes with manual guidance cutoff pretty much on it. However, you can then shoot your rockets into the ground. They become mines. The mines are set up and then explode, similar to how the proximity mines from Engineer work, and you do get a lot more damage from them. But they can be kind of finicky, and they don't last nearly as long as proximity mines. They last like 15 seconds, so if you start shooting them, starting making your mine filled, and then enemies just ignore it, go around it, whatever it might be, you just kind of wasted a bunch of ammo, which can be kind of annoying. I would say Mine Layer System can also be really strong on certain missions, like where you can have Dreadnoughts forcibly run through your minefield. Moving on to the secondary weapons, first up we got the Bulldog Heavy Revolver, and the overclock that I'd pick for this one is going to be Chain Hit. This one isn't even bad. It's still decent. It's still a plus to the weapon, but it definitely feels like an overclock that needs something more to it, because right now it's just kind of an overclock you toss on the revolver if it's the only overclock you have. What this one does is any shot that hits a weak point has a 75% chance of bouncing into another enemy within 5 meters. This doesn't really target any enemy in particular, so it can hit anything, as well as it doesn't target the weak spot of the enemy. It can hit anywhere. So if you kill a grunt by a headshot or something like that at Macterra, and then it bounces into the armor plating of a Praetorian or the armor plating of even worse, an Oppressor, it's not going to do a whole lot, which is kind of disappointing. It will give you a little bit more value. It will generally give you quite a bit more value than you would just not running an overclock, but it's nowhere near as flashy as a lot of the other overclocks for the Bulldog Heavy Revolver, and it's just my least favorite. Moving on to the Burst Pistol, the overclock that I'd say is the weakest on the Burst Pistol right now is probably Full Chamber Seal. This one, again, is kind of a basic overclock, but it doesn't really give you a whole lot for what it is. You get 1 more point of damage, which is a plus, but it's not a huge plus, and it usually won't matter on breakpoints. Maybe if you build it certain ways it would, but I can't really think of any at the moment. And it gives you a 0.2 second faster reload speed, which the burst pistol already reloads pretty quick. You can stack this with faster reload speed and get down to a very fast reload speed of like 1.4 seconds. But it's not going to be massively different than the other burst pistol builds. So even that is kind of whatever. This one just feels like it should be reworked into some other kind of overclock, at least in my opinion, because we already have 3 damage mods for the burst pistol, or 3 damage overclocks for the burst pistol, including a clean, a balanced, and an unstable one. And the balanced and unstable are far better than this one. They come with tremendous upsides and potential downsides. This one is nothing but an upside, but it's a very slight upside, and I really feel like it should kind of be changed because the other 2 usually outcompete it. If you want more damage overall, you're probably going to go with experimental rounds, assuming you still want to keep the range. And if you just want the most amount of damage, you're going to go with lead spray. So again, assuming you have all of these. If you don't, it's your only overclock, yeah, throw it on. It'll be better than nothing. And then our last secondary is the coil gun, and the overclock I picked for this one is Reatomizer. This one is just kind of a weird one. It's kind of fun trying to get it to work, and it can be kind of satisfying when it does work, but it's not super strong a lot of the time. What Reatomizer does is once you hit an enemy, or once a shot penetrates through an enemy that is affected by a status, then it will apply that status effect to all other enemies, with the exception of burning, frozen, and warden buffs. So if things are frozen, it doesn't count. If things are burning, it doesn't count. But if they're affected by neurotoxin, it counts, which usually doesn't matter. But or if I think it also carries stuns with it, but I'm not entirely sure. And this one was kind of bugged for a while, which made it super fun to where you could transfer the elite status from an enemy to potentially other enemies, and making your dive a whole lot harder than it needs to be. And you could also transfer it to a Steve, so then you could have an elite Steve, which was really cool when that actually worked. That's since been patched out though. You can't do that anymore, unfortunately. And now Reatomizer just feels kind of like a gimmick to the coil gun. It doesn't come at any downside, so it's not necessarily a terrible gimmick or anything, but it feels like it's more hassle than what it's worth. You don't get a whole lot of value from it. At least in my experience, I haven't gotten a ton of value from using Reatomizer, and I wouldn't really change it. I think it's actually kind of a cool overclock. I think it's fun to actually try to get to work, but it's not an overclock that I'm really reaching for when I want to do a particular difficult mission or anything. It's just kind of a fun, goofy overclock, so that's why it's here. And that will do it for Gunner's, again, worst overclocks. Thanks for watching this. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll be taking a look at Engineer next, and then Driller last. That should be a lot of fun to do too. Hope you guys are enjoying these kind of videos. Again, don't take them too seriously. They are just meant for fun. Special thanks to the supporters of this channel. These were members over here on YouTube, and my patrons over on Patreon. They get early access to videos just like this. If you'd like to be a part of that, you can. There are links down in the description. Be sure to check those out. You guys all have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye!